Welcome back to The Conservative. Hi there, I'm Mike Lannon, your host, and coming to you from PEGTV, and you can pick up this show anytime you'd like by using the computer archives, and they've got my shows archived there, and you can click on and find the shows, and that's one way to view them. I can't sit here and tell you what days they're on, other than they're on 4 times a week, and I change the show every 2 weeks, so on the actual TV show, they appear 8 times. But you can get this show on the computer, and it's a really nice part of PEGTV. They have these shows all archived, and you're more than welcome to look at them anytime you'd like. Well, the last couple of shows, you know, that I've talked at great length about the death of the Republic by changing our form of worship from the God of our founding fathers, the Judeo-Christian principles, to the God of government, and that the government is the value structure for all of us, and we should be worshiping the government. So, you know, I've gone down through 3 weeks of that, and you can go back to the archives and find that out if you've missed that show, or those 3 shows, but the last one is probably the summary, and that's the one to really get a hold of and take a look at my perspectives on what's happening in America and how we go down the wrong road. And as we continue to go down the wrong road, and people continue to believe the press, and they continue to believe those who they talk to without any form of a discernment meaning to take a look at it for yourself, find out what the truth is, then you will fall trap to believing your friends who have probably no more clue as to what's going on than you do, other than they have maybe a greater voice or more respect given to them for their voice than perhaps you, because you haven't spoken out enough, or you haven't studied enough or learned enough in order to speak out on their viewpoints. And then, of course, the colleges, the educational system, the political system, Vermont's particularly unique political system that has a one-party system that is gone as far left. Well, it hasn't gone as far left as it's going to go. Eventually, this is going to be a highly advanced democratic socialist state, meaning communist state, because you can call it anything you want. You can dress a pig up, a pig is a pig, and you can look down the road and see that a communist state is a state in which the government controls all entities. And what are those entities? The government controls your religious foundational beliefs, the government controls your political beliefs, the government controls your economic beliefs, the government controls all forms of corporate entities, those who are going to be allowed to have any kind of a corporation, and those who are now going to be controlled by the educational system. So, for instance, if you take a real good look at the communist regimes around the world as they are currently addressed, if your child is not doing well in school by the time they hit the 5th grade, if they don't pass the state test, they will be eliminated from school and they will go to work for the state. That's what happened in the old Soviet Union. That's continued to go on in Russia. That's what happens in China. So they test very high in their scores, but they don't test all their children. So when we test in America and we score as low as we do, we got to remember that we're testing everybody. We believe in an education, at least so far, we believe in an education for everyone. So that's going to eventually come to an end, because we can't afford an education as we currently have it structured for everyone. And one of the things that's going to happen in the world of education, again controlled by the government, will be online education. You can get a lot of online education right now at the collegiate level. Never have to see a classmate, never have to see the college professor, and you can take those online courses from all over the country and get full credit for them. And many of them are even degreed programs, so that when you come out, you have a degree, and very few people are ever going to ask you where did your degree come from and how well did you do. Most people, when you get out of college, that are going to hire you only care whether, one, you were a graduate, and two, did you and can you provide achievement? Can you do something for the owner in the form of his employment? Well, that being the government, you can have 5 people watching one person work. We all know that joke. It's really not a joke, but we've all seen state workers leaning on their shovels while one man digs. And that, if I were a state worker and knew that that particular myth, whether it be a myth or not, were out there, there's no way I'd ever be on a highway with a shovel leaning on it so that the passing by passenger could put my name or associate my physical features or my face to that shovel while the other guy digs. I'd go hide behind a tree if I had to, but that's what we do, and that's the part of government. So if you look carefully at government, even in the state of Vermont, there are more people working in the educational department per capita, per expense, than there are actually out in the world of education. So you have to look at that stat very carefully, because it's not the same as saying there's more workers. I'm saying that there are more people per capita, per expense, working in the state government, having absolutely nothing to do with the education of the child in whatever community you want to relate that information to. So when you're looking very carefully at what kind of an education a child is getting, if you're getting an education that is government controlled, it's going to be watered down, because that's what they do. The siphoning off of the top end money, the corruption of it all, and that's part of the power structure of why we have children that are labeled, part of the power structure of why we have special education, part of the problem of what we expect from children today in the world of education versus what we expected from children 50 years ago. And all the layers and the tiers of education that are thrown on that are now all controlled by the government. So those things that I've just talked to you about in the first 5 minutes here are all laid out in the reasons why in my last 3 shows, and that last show, the summary, will tell you specifically why we're walking away from our Judeo-Christian principles and what we used to do versus what we're doing now. And the veil, the God veil that comes down across mankind when we defy the tenets of the principles of Judeo-Christian principles. And you can read all about that in the oldest book that we can translate anywhere in the world, which is the biblical record. And every time that man defied God in the Old Testament, there was a retribution from the God that controls the earth. And those of us that still believe that the biblical record is the truth will tell you that despite all the people on the left yelling and screaming what nonsense that book is, that is our oldest historical record. And it appears to most people that really read it and study it deeply have a wonderful knowledge that led to the understanding and led to the wisdom of what's actually written there, will tell you that that record is accurate and prophetically sound, and the left who's screaming and yelling against it has no clue what they're talking about. So that's a comparison that could be made between the left and the right, but the left will shout you down and scream and yell at you if you dare to stand up and say that's what you believe. So that comes down to, again, the criminality of that corruption. Corruption in general is, quite frankly, a crime. So we're faced with that now as I broadcast and prepare this next 2-week show that you see me working on today. We've had our first big snowstorm, ice, sleet, and snowstorm here in Vermont for early November. Been out shoveling, didn't prepare with a coat and tie today. Did take a shower, but I'm in my clothing that would be my more relaxed clothing. And important for you to realize that conservatives don't always have to dress in a suit, a coat, and a tie. We can dress like the left does also. And it doesn't matter. It's the thought process of a conservative that counts, just like it is the thought process of the liberal that counts. And the two of us should be able to eventually sit down in a room and have a conversation, not hate speech, which we have in the country today, just reams and reams and reams of hate speech, meaning that the left is nuts and the right is nuts. And so therefore, because we're both nutty, there's no way to come together and have any kind of value talk. We're not going to build any form of shared meaning for sure. We're not going to be able to balance my position with any kind of inquiry that would lead me to think that maybe the left had a position, because they're already yelling and screaming at me and at all those who are on the right that we don't know what we're talking about. Shame on them, because that is intellectual arrogance and intellectual dishonesty. So the crimes, interesting that as we talk today, Donald Trump is about to have impeachment hearings, illegal impeachment hearings, by the way, Stalinistic old Soviet Union backroom impeachment hearings. It's a show trial with no evidence being able to be presented by the defense, no lawyers being allowed to be present while the accusations are being made, no defense being made, just using the press, a willing press, to come out with the statements that are leaked, because those are the favorable statements. I noticed that Ambassador Volker hasn't been, none of his statements have been leaked, because from what I understand, the highest person in the chain of the order of the Ukraine ambassadorships, a person that would really absolutely know, has already said there is no quid pro quo. Well, quid pro quo would generally be a crime if indeed we didn't look at past precedent by all presidents on why we give money to nations. We don't give money to nations without some kind of an expectation back from it. President Obama, under the cover of darkness, loaded planes with cash money on pallets, put them on those planes and sent them to Iran. It's billions of dollars, wrapped in shrink wrap. Unloaded those billions of dollars, and what was it for? Well, some people would say, well, that was the Iranian money that we'd frozen. No, we'd frozen it for a reason. We don't want them to have a nuclear bomb, because they have said, and I believe they mean it, they're planning to blow up and eliminate Israel. They're going to make, if they can, Israel a parking lot. Well, that's great rhetoric, because before that all happens, they might get away with delivering that bomb. But guess what? Iran's going to be made a parking lot, and they're not going to need the United States to do it. Who's going to do it for them? Israel has enough might in their armed services to take Iran out. People don't seem to remember that Iran doesn't have a nuclear bomb. Israel, from all accounts, has many in its arsenal. That would not surprise me. Certainly they would have gotten help from the United States to build one, but they've kept it under wraps and kept it secret. And so so it's not well known if they do or they don't have one, but most people believe that they do have one. And even if they didn't have one, they've got bunker bombs, and they've got the bombs that are necessary to still make Iran and the population of Iran, the mullahs, those are the religious zealots that run that country, into a parking lot. So other than the United States military secret elite services such as SEALs, Israel has one of the most secretive armies in the world, both men and women, highly trained to do what Israel needs to have done undercover, in the form of stealth, incognito. The only other nation that has assassination power, or has used assassination power that we're aware of, well, there's two nations I can think of right away. Russia has done it. We've seen how they've used radiation to kill people that they did not want to continue to be on this earth, and North Korea has done it. So usually the person that is about to be assassinated, someone walks by and injects them quickly with radiation needle, and within a week of that, these people are dead. And you can go and Google all of that and find the truth of that and see that it's actually happening. Sounds like James Bond, but the fiction stories of the past soon become the historical fact, because if I can think it, I can achieve it. And I can remember as a boy, and I've talked about this before, the Dick Tracy watch that Dick Tracy was able to communicate with his police sergeant and the police force by use of his Dick Tracy watch was always just back in the 50s and early 60s a fiction. It's a truth today. You can communicate via your watch with the rest of the world. That's technology that's improving and improving and improving. So we're going to see those kinds of things coming in the next 100 years. We would never have believed that the airplane that we see today would have been around. And as I recall, the airplane that we see, the original airplane was, I think, 1903. So it's just barely over 100 years old, that technology, and look at where it is today. You can go back and see the electric light, the phonograph, the words that we used back then today are non-existent. We don't really have phonograph records, although some of them are coming back, because vinyl records, some people claim, are much better than any other kind of music that we have on tape or iTunes or anything like that. But that's a different story, but that innovative American method of getting things done. So when Obama put all that money on that airplane and sent it to Iran, don't you think there was a quid pro quo? In other words, I'll do this if you do that. If you don't do that, I won't do this. That's a quid pro quo. What do you think they got for that billions of dollars that they released to Iran? The Iranian nuclear deal. That was what it was all about. If you, we'll give you this money if you sit down and negotiate a deal with us. So we sat down and negotiated a terrible deal. We gave them the money. President Trump comes along and says, I'm not adhering to that deal because they're still building the bomb. They have not done a darn thing for that money. So think of all the countries in the world that we talk to right now. We give Mexico a fortune every single year just to try to eliminate the cartels. I'd be willing to bet if you really look carefully at Mexico, there's a ton of corruption and graft with our money, because the cartels have just wiped out 6 Americans, women and children, brutalized them with, riddled their cars with bullets and burned those babies alive, according to the press reports. If you can believe the press reports, let's say that they're half-truth, then that means that half those babies were burned alive while they sat in their car seats. So what have we done to really stop the cartel? And then President Trump immediately says, well, we should probably get down there and stop this nonsense. And of course, the left immediately pushed back and said, no, we shouldn't be doing that. You know, that's not. No, Trump doesn't believe in starting a war. He believes in bringing all of the troops that we have around the world home. Yeah, a lot of people say that's isolationist policy. He's not talking about isolationist policy. He's talking about using our armed services in a different method than we've ever done it before. And that is like he just did with the terrorist, Abdul, and can't remember all of his name. It's these Muslim names are forever long, but they took out the most wanted terrorist in the nation next to Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden got taken out by Obama, and this Abdul guy was taken out by Trump. But Trump has got a different way and approach. He said we should be using our expertise, our SEALs, our Rangers, our elite forces to go in, make our strike, and get out. We're going to lose fewer people. We're not going to be there for any length of time. We're going to go in, do what we have to do, and get out. Let's say we fail. We get in, and we get out, and we didn't hit our objective. Gee, we can go another night. We've got enough people to get in and get out. And lots of times, if we do it like the Israelis, people don't even know what happened. They get in, the Israelis get in, all over the world. They get in, you never even see it in the paper. They get in, they make their strike, they take out the person that's a bad person on the world stage, and they're gone. And lots of times we can't even prove that they've done it. That's a lot better than having 50,000 troops on a border somewhere, or 50,000 troops stationed in a country for 18 years like we have in Afghanistan right now. And what for? What have we gained from that atrocity? Not a lot. We can't prove that we've actually taken down the next strike from a terrorist group in America. Yeah, we've been safe so far. Thank you, God, for the Homeland Security that the left wants to abolish. Thank you, God, for ICE, who the Homeland Security wants to abolish. Thank you very much for the rank and file of the FBI that the left wants to abolish. Thank you very much for the local police force, sheriff's departments, firemen and first responders that the left would like to abolish or have you believe that they're no good, that they're bums, and we should get rid of them. That's what the left wants. They want absolutely no law enforcement. If they did, they would be praising the majority of the officers in this country who put their service revolvers around their waist or behind their back or in their holsters every day and go out and risk their lives for no thanks. There was a time when we would look up to the police officer and have a tremendous amount of respect for them. I still do. And I know, just like in any profession, there are good professional police officers and there are bad professional police officers. Gee, same in the world of doctors, same in the world of teachers, same in the world of farmers, same in the world of laborers. Does everybody think, and as you watch this show, no matter where you've worked in your lifetime, you can stop and think and say, hey, look, there have been some really great people that I worked alongside. Maybe you're one of those great ones, okay? But there's also been people that didn't hold a candle to what they were supposed to be doing. And yeah, they weren't necessarily the good guys. They cut corners. They cheated the boss. They did things that they shouldn't have done. We all knew that they did it, okay? Well, in the world of the police, that respect has got to be given. We cannot continue to continually tear them down and somehow think that they're going to protect us from crime. Why would I give up my career by putting myself out on the line in a city or in a community that didn't have any respect for me? So I might turn my back on a crime that I think, well, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Maybe I'll investigate it tomorrow rather than tonight. Well, it's just a little sin. It's just a little sin, just a little crime. Little sins don't matter, Little sins can lead to big sins, but they don't very often, So if I steal a lollipop from Walmart, I'm not going to steal again anywhere else because, oh, gee, I got away with it. Gee, if I got away with that, maybe I can get away with a little bit more. So the criminal mind is going to figure out quickly and spend a lot of time on how to escalate the stealing of the lollipop. If I can get away with one little thing, one little sin, then the next one isn't so difficult to do. I can justify it in my mind. I can go forward with it. And those people in authority who fear that they're going to have their job put on the line, they're going to be sued, they're going to be punched around like they were a punching bag for nothing better than the lack of respect given to them. Why would they put themselves out on the line? So let's say, who would those kind of people be? The ministers of a church that used to stand in the breach and say you're wrong and do the appropriate rebuke. Don't do that anymore. Afraid that they're going to lose their congregation. I'd rather lose the entire congregation and have only one person standing with me or nobody, as to have everybody sit in their seat and say, well, that's okay. We can violate God's laws. But then we got the teachers. Teachers don't stand up like they used to 50 years ago. Why? They're afraid of being sued. They're afraid that Johnny has more power than they have. And so they take abuse from that disrespectful child and somehow are then expected to make that child have a growth mindset when the child sits in the chair and looks at the teacher and says, you don't know anything. Well, then the child should be teaching. The teacher sit down and they can show and model what it means to sit and try to figure out what the child's saying. Model that kind of education. Teachers in general know what the heck they're doing, okay? They are proficient in their subject content so that they can give appropriate and meaningful feedback such that the learner can move progressively through their curriculum levels. Oh, we don't want that to happen. Gee, a child might actually graduate from grade to grade and know what the heck they're doing. We wouldn't want that to happen, so let's water that down. Let's do the same thing to the police. Let's not have the police reprimand a child that's stealing from Walmart. Let's not have the police reprimand a child that is caught speeding. Let's not have the police do anything to a child that commits a serious offense. Oh no, let's cover it all up. Let's give that child a break. Let's not punish him at all. And let's never talk to the parents about it because after all, they might also be at fault. So we tear down the fabric of our society by allowing these things to happen. And we have got to step up and stand up and stop it. Now, those of you on the left that are hearing this say, oh, gee, we can't do that. Oh, Lord. That's the problem. The left allows all of this kind of stuff to happen. The conservative right, they hate this. And that's one of the reasons that we can't talk to the left, is that there's no compromise here. Since when should an arsonist be allowed to be out on the street? Have you noticed what's going on in New York State right now? They've just passed a law that allows the criminal that is being released, and they're releasing a ton of them, the low-level criminal, to go back to the crime scene and look over the crime scene that he was involved in so that he can get some form of a rehabilitation. Meanwhile, if it's a home burglary and he's being allowed to go in, that homeowner is now being told that they have to reopen their house so that the burglar that has terrorized them with a burglary, and that's what burglaries are, terrorism, is going to be allowed to come back in. And guess what? If the homeowner doesn't allow that to happen, they can be convicted of a violation of the law. This is ludicrous. Since when should anybody who has violated the law be allowed to go back to their crime scene for rehabilitative services at the expense of the victim? This is craziness. But that's what New York State has just passed. That's what Governor Cuomo thinks is a great, great law. But Vermont's no better. We've got our own situations going on in this state. We've got the only state in the union that plans to force the citizens to rethink their constitution. And I'm hoping and praying that this state gets smart enough in a hurry to not allow the Prop 5, which is the proposition that the Constitution be changed so that an abortion is legal constitutionally. That is so insane because it is absolutely, totally against Judeo-Christian principles. It's the raping, yes, the raping of the tenets of the commandments. Thou shalt not kill. And people don't want to talk about that, but go study and go learn about what a zygote is, Z-Y-G-O-T-E. Go find out what that is and then come back and talk to me about abortion, because most people have no clue what that is. And if you don't have that, then you should, if you don't have that knowledge, that understanding, that wisdom of a zygote, then you should not be even talking about abortion because you don't know what you're talking about. So that's an important piece. So that's one thing. So we've got the state of Vermont who's going down its own lefty road, and you've got the state of New York that's going down its own lefty road, and you've got every state in the Northeast right now going down its lefty road, and eventually it will be to do everything it can to destroy this democracy that Jefferson and Franklin and Washington all declared, not just them, but those are the three that came to the top of my mind, all declared that it was going to be very difficult. Generation after generation would have to take and stand up and defend this Constitution. Ronald Reagan said it. So we have to do what we have to do in order to protect this nation. Otherwise, one generation from now, there's enough mushheads coming through college right now that believe that we should give socialism an experimental try. Well, wait until those mushheads find out what happens to them, because the thinkers of all the nations that have ever undergone the government of socialism, because they are critical thinkers, they have the ability to reason, they are eliminated from the government. Oh yeah, they wind up dead. So go study Stalin, go study what's going on in Venezuela, what's going on in Bolivia, any of these states. Go study North Korea. There's a perfect example. Go study the folks that used to be the intellectual elites, all you professors out there that are championing socialism. Watch what happens to you. You're gone, okay? Unless something happens that historically that has never happened before, and that the intellectual elite are allowed to survive, good luck, because from what most people can read and see, the intellectual elite are eliminated. Either they become part of the government and keep their mouths shut, or they go to rehabilitation camps and are never seen again. That's what they do to them. Soviet Union has tons of gulags. We had one of those intellectual elite that lived here in Cavendish, Vermont for a long time, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. If he were still alive, and just read his books, you can see what that was like. He was one of the intellectual elites, And boy, did they go after him and his family. He was fortunate enough to get to America. Anyway, time has run out. I got started here on the crimes and the corruption of the governments. We have it full-fledged, and we've got a president of the United States right now who basically has said it's time to drain this corrupt swamp, and they are fighting him tooth and nail because they do not want to lose those financial privileges that come with corruption. See you next time. Bye now.